As I noted last night, when I launched the ad infinitum, if you want to call it this, the listening party to Chapter 3 Downfall, as I promised you a while back, I was going to cover this album in its entirety, and that's not something I often do. But for a specialized talent, in my opinion, like ad infinitum, I know the opinions in regard of many of you as well, they deserve such a recognition. And I'd learned from, chapters 1 and 2, in the selection of tracks I'd covered, many of you know my journey with ad infinitum started very recently in December of last year. And I started with a good selection of tracks from both chapters 1 and 2, as well as some of their other entries, and I fell madly in love with them. So much so that I promised you, I'm going to go back, after I cover this good range of pieces and listen to the albums in their entirety. In fact, with ad infinitum, I took it on faith, and I actually pre-bought everything that was available at the time, even prior to covering them on a first piece. That was the connection point for me in terms of strength with Melissa Bonney's talents, even though the group generally is wonderful, and I've highly entertained myself in engaging with their works. Melissa was the point of access through, as I've explained many times, the Mortinia collaboration. Many of you might not know that name. I reference him all the time, especially in regards to ad infinitum, because again, I credit him for a lot of the reason I've come across many of these talents, like ad infinitum and Melissa Bonney. He's a one-man Norwegian symphonic Gothic metal artist, if you're not familiar, and I would highly recommend, if you aren't familiar with his pieces, or maybe you haven't heard this one yet, go engage with the collaboration between him and Melissa Bonney of Devastation Bound. It's one of my favorite pieces from him. That's how I came across ad infinitum by name. In regard and connection was the Mortinia collab, and I said at that point, Melissa's impression of what she left with me on that Devastation Bound song was just so good. I'm like, I gotta hear ad infinitum. And I've been in no way disappointed since. The entirety of the albums in regards to chapters 1 and 2, exquisite listens. But it wasn't the same in covering, I missed out, as I've explained before as well. There's something special about music being a collaborative enjoyment, even if necessarily I can't see you. I've had plenty of exchanges, right, in the comment sections. I know, from interaction I've had, that it is valued. And for me, I like that experience, of it being a shared time, rather than just a limited exposure. That's why I loved being able to cover ad infinitum so much, and why I went back and listened to the albums on my own. I felt like there was something missing, right? It just wasn't it didn't have a dimension that covering ad infinitum and listening to those songs with you, the brief selections from the album did. And I decided upon that. As I evolve music on this channel as a presence, and I've wanted to for a very long time, it's been, a long-standing aspiration since I started this channel in the beginning. Music for me very much is a first love aside from other entertainment ventures. And to specify properly, I admire each artistic expression and that its language is very specialized. But music for me is the one that's touched me in my life the most. Showcasing a talent like ad infinitum was just inevitable, quite frankly, as I look to, and I give a good range and scope to coverage of artists, from all different landscapes, whether it be in name presence or in geography even. I've said many times, I cannot get enough of the European metal scene, and that's where ad infinitum is from, being a Swiss symphonic metal group. It's been a wonderful experience to cover them, that looking at Chapter 3 and learning my lessons off of Chapter 1 and 2, and unfortunately not engaging with the albums in full on this channel, as I wish I had in terms of first-time listening, I said I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. And with Chapter 3, we've done a listening party together of the entire remainder of the album, besides the 4 singles that came out in advance, all 8 of the remaining tracks, or, as of last night, all 7. And you might remember this explanation I provided in that I was going a bit out of order, because I started with the Underworld and worked to what we had available presently. But because the video for Eternal Reigns, the 5th video for an infinitum album, but that's new and setting a good standard, maybe going forward 5 instead of the usual 4, which has been fun as well with the 4, it's a good collection summary of videos, but 5 is even better. This video didn't debut until this morning, right? The official debut of ad infinitum's Chapter 3 Downfall. And so I said I'd wait. We're going to cap off our listening party with this. So again, a bit of an unconventional order. Ideally, I would have started here, but just the video was not out yet. And because the video adds an exquisite dimension to their work, and it's fun to enjoy, visualizer accompaniment, I figured, let's wait it out. And now we're going to have the enjoyment together again of what I've been pining away to hear to finish out my journey thus far with Eternal Reigns. And I do, for those of you, again, I'm sure many of you approaching this video are long-time infinitors like myself, even though you advanced me in a number of years, I'm sure. Well, I know you do. But again, I think we're all equalized in terms of our admiration of this talent, quite frankly. I've engaged with them at this point 22 times publicly, this being the 23rd. I can't wait to hear more. And with Melissa Bonney, even more so, given that I've recently been listening to The Dark Side of the Moon, her group with a couple of the other members of Amaranth, or one member of Amaranth and Feuerschwangs. It's sort of like a hodgepodge collab. They're exquisite, by the way. Videos incoming, too. 4 in total of what's been presently available. I can't wait to feature them as well. They're so good. Anyway, Eternal Reigns. I hope for those of you who are longtime Infinitors, you're going to enjoy this piece. I'm sure you will. And for those of you who perhaps are approaching Ad Infinitum on a first-name basis, take it on faith from me. You're going to like them. Go consult their entire back catalog. Perhaps take the journey with me and what I've covered thus far on this channel, and maybe the entirety of Chapter 3 if you wish to. But start at the beginning. Start with Chapter 1. You will thank me. They are exquisite talents in the symphonic metal scene. Even if maybe, you're not necessarily metal, I think you'll appreciate, because, music is very subjective in terms of genre preference, perhaps. Even I know the metal space generally is seen as a little more limited and niche. I don't mind it, though. I love being in a niche space. I've always gravitated to the alternative just in my music tastes. I'm very originalist in many ways. I think you're going to enjoy the craft of artistry here and the extent of it with Ad Infinitum, so much so that you'll be like, yeah, I may not be a metal fan, but I can't get enough of Ad Infinitum. I think you'll really like them. Eternal Reigns. Let's enjoy this together. I have the music video queued up. And if you're not familiar, again, as I said many times, with the way I format my coverage and perhaps my content is a first introduction for you, I do provide the lyrics for you as we listen to tracks together. If you wish to read along with the message of the piece, those will be provided in the video. You'll see them pop up in a minute when Eternal Reigns commences now. Yeah. Nice. Especially on this being track number 1. Great entrance.
There's a storm in the air, it's coming closer. I can tell that we swim in troubled waters, and the fate of the world's above and under.
Vocals are exceptional, like everything on this album. Wonderful. The vocal layering and that string involvement. Perfect. Wow. Oh, everything here is so perfect. Vocal performance, range, the energy, the riffs. Just love it. So good. One of the top tracks for me on this album. And these pre-chorus sections are wonderful. Again, that vocal menace. Love it. Transitions, just, they're nailing them. Exquisite. Again, it's a banger. This track's got everything. It's such a good placement to put this as number 1. Especially for new listeners. I think this is going to immediately drive you into looking at more from them. Wonderful. Oh man, everything here is just great. Oh. I am so glad that's number one. The placement on that is perfect. As the introductory work, and this is feeding right into Upside Down, which just continues the pressure up until, where's the break point? Somewhere better. The first four tracks are just so hard and heavy. This one is, man, it's probably one of the best on the album. You know, it reminds me a lot of, in its drive, I was, you know, it's been on my mind, like, with the last album, Chapter 2, my favorite track, undisputedly, on that album, and there's a lot, I've liked everything I've heard of Ad Infinitum, but what are the two pieces, again, that really stick out in my mind? I think that's tracks 8 and 10. I believe Into the Night and whatever that other one's name is. I always forget it, too. Let me see. 8 and 10. My Justice, Your Pain. Those pieces are excellent. And again, there's been so many, all of which I've covered on that album I loved. But Afterlife, for me, is still the paramount hit. And I've been thinking, like, is there going to be a piece on this album that's sort of going to echo that in energy? Maybe not necessarily in as much experimentation, or as much of an experimentation side as that piece contributed. In part because that song, if you've never heard it before, and I would highly recommend if you engage with Ad Infinitum in their back library, make sure you check out that one. I say check out the entirety, but put specific focus on Afterlife. You will thank me for that. The experimentation and the dancing around of many sundry elements, seemingly, but creating such a unified work, I'm still in a state of shock every time I hear it. Like, as I was when I first engaged with it, maybe you probably remember that. It was just like, how do you take that in and process it? Because it's just so good. And still, I enter that same phase of reflection on it continually every time I listen to it. It's just such a masterful work of art. This, for me, again, it's very different. It's much more streamlined and mainstream in sound, although it has some points of deviation, especially on key. Like, I love the transitions back into the verses from those chorus sections. Everything here is just, again, like I said, with the mapping, so tight and packaged well. But the potency of it just has this drive that I find it to be my favorite. I mean, of course, it's advantageous on genre feeling anyway. I've always said, you know, I've been a big metalhead for many years, and especially on the aggressive side, you know, I do keep a broad door open, right? Because people have general differences, you know, in genre tastes, depending on who they are. Even in the metal scene, some people prefer more ballads-centric stuff, others harsher headbang-type material. And this certainly fits the case of the latter, and I'm immediately driven to it on that metric alone. But with everything here in terms of the performance vibe, and by the way, did they film this? They probably didn't. It's funny to me because of the way this is staged and it's presented. It's probably like on, maybe it's like on a more limited screen. I think of stuff, you know, many of you are aware, if you follow my channel, broadly speaking, you understand that I cover a lot more stuff in the cinematic space, and I have for many years, even though, like I said, music is a very recent presence and is going to be evolving over time. It already has in its presentation. In some cases, it's outranking other ventures of what I've covered more so routinely for many years. But I'm very familiarized with the cinematic scene and a lot of the entertainment happening in that landscape. And so, let's say, for example, shows that are becoming, and everything's CGI heavy these days, but I think of, you know, The Mandalorian, for example, and the Star Wars Disney Plus show. The technology there, I think it's called the volume. It really impresses me. It's sort of like a new innovation in cinematic CGI work. It's really impressive if you looked into just even a rough estimation of information on the technology and the way it's constructed and how it's utilized for the filmmaking process. I look at this and it sort of reminds me of like the backdrop. I think it's probably different in terms of wherever they are, even though the limited window of it kind of reminds me of that in style a bit, just slightly. You know, again, like I said, it's got kind of a CGI vibe in the presence, but it's still, I mean, it kind of reminds me of that technology. I'm sure it's not. It looks like more so like a projector on a wall or something. But it's just so much fun to entertain this video. I mean, again, and there's something special, by the way, about particular music videos, and this isn't the only case of this, I forget maybe some examples at the moment, but videos that utilize a rain pattern, especially dancing off the instruments and saturating everything, it makes the presentation even more entertaining and engaging, in my opinion, even though the piece in itself is. And again, like I said, the structure of this and Melissa's vocals are incredible. The wavering, the layering of the screams, especially as an outro effect, wonderful. Everything here, like I said, with this piece is just so signature ad infinitum for me, and it's a piece that I'm immediately going to revere. Many repeat listens. Many. As Chapter 3 will be, broadly speaking. I mean, I've given ad infinitum so much airtime in my playlist, and I've said, for a long while, they've become a pleasant addiction. They're fun to entertain. They truly are, in my opinion, masters in the rock scene. I love their music so much. I mean, again, I can't say it enough. All credit to Mortimia for being the bridge that got me into them, because I probably would have found out about Infinitum later, given many of your recommendations. They were a name that came through, but I fast-tracked because, again, of my understanding of Melissa Bonney's talents from that Devastation Bound collaboration. And I've been a fan ever since. I love this band so much. Ad Infinitum. Must hear if you have not in their entirety. I cannot recommend them enough, and I'm sure this track has given you witness to their talents exquisitely. I love it. Eternal Rains is one of my favorites on this particular album. And there's been the tracks I consulted all of last night. Generally speaking, I love them all, as I do with Ad Infinitum on every album. And the experience has been, I didn't want to repeat the feeling of unintentional abandonment. Again, what I experienced in chapters 1 and 2, I really missed that shared experience, especially on some of the signature tracks. Let's say, for example, in the case of Chapter 2, Legacy, Into the Night, Am I Justice, Your Pain. Those songs I would have loved to cover live. I really would have, just like I have the entirety of Chapter 3. I said I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, and I'm grateful that I didn't. What are your guys' thoughts with this particular album, and in specified focus here, this entry, Eternal Reigns? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and whatever angle it come from, if you wish to disclose your perspective. If you're a long-time Infinitor like myself, or maybe you advanced me in years, I'm sure a number of you, and those of you who are maybe initiate Infinitors. How did you feel about this? And does this track compel you to look deeper? I suspect it is. I suspect it will. Let me know your thoughts down below. I mean, again, it only took me one listen to be like, yep, I gotta hear more. And that first track was Marching on Versailles. I'm like, it was perfect. It really was. And ever since, I've been a devoted fan. And as far as I'm concerned going forward, I mean, we might be finishing Chapter 3. And I still have yet to examine a couple of Melissa Bonney's other collaborative efforts. I'm going to. War Kings has been a name that's been thrown my way. Feuerschwangs, I'm in the process of covering. I've gotten 2 tracks in thus far. I'm still working my way through, and I haven't gone yet to the Melissa Bonney pieces. I can't wait. And Camelot. Camelot's coming too. I've already acquired some of their pieces. I'm probably actually going to... Don't be surprised if I end up doing a full album coverage to their latest release as well. I might. We'll see. No promises yet, but I'm thinking on it. I just have a suspicion with Camelot. I'm going to really like them. Anyway, in regards to Ad Infinitum, another perfect release. Since we're capping off Chapter 3, this is exquisite. I love this song. It's a wonderful collection of work from them. Loved the experience of being able to engage with you in full on this particular release, because Chapter 3 is, creatively speaking, very strong. Loved it. Love this song as well. It's a must listen again and again and again. It is so strong of a work. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.